Chapter 13, The Law of Recurrence. By judiciously analyzing the theory of reincarnation that has been stated by many different pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist thinkers of this day and age, we have arrived at the conclusion that all of these authors are totally confused. The doctrine of reincarnation comes from the cult of Krishna, which is an ancient Vedic religion. Unfortunately, this sublime doctrine was extremely adulterated by many reformers. In the cult of Krishna, it has been wisely stated that only the gods, demigods, heroes, titans, divine kings, masters, and guides of humanity reincarnate. Nevertheless, the diverse pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist schools have propagated this concept in a very mistaken way. These schools mistakenly preach unto the multitudes that every human being reincarnates. Alongside the doctrine of reincarnation, there also exists the idea of the transmigration of souls, which includes the reincorporation of human souls into animal creatures. Obviously, the terrible human pride considered the reincorporation of human souls into animal creatures as an alteration or distortion of the wise doctrine of reincarnation. Thus, inevitably, by dint of pride, the theory of the transmigration of souls was rejected. In the four Gospels, Jesus Christ emphasizes the difficulty that exists in order to enter into the kingdom. The great master never said that all human beings would enter into the kingdom. Here enters the law of natural selection. Many are called and few are chosen. The entire human species, with the exception of a few, enter into the infernal worlds, where they are terminated through the second death. This event is always repeated in all of the planets of infinite space. We have already stated that only with the second death can the lost souls be liberated from the infernal worlds. The law of eternal return always brings the failed souls, who lived within the underworld, and who passed through the second death to a new cosmic manifestation. The law of eternal return provides the foundation for the doctrine of the transmigration of souls. Millions of failed souls from past cycles of manifestation are now elementals from the mineral or plant kingdoms, and also animal creatures who long to reconquer the human state which they had lost in times of yore. The wise idea of the eternal return of all things is invariably united to Pythagorean wisdom and to the second Hindustani cosmogony. The entire doctrine about the life of Brahma, Mahamanvantaras and Pralayas, Kalpas, the breath of Brahma, etc., so on and so forth, are intimately related to the doctrine of Pythagoras and to the law of recurrence or eternal return. An in-depth analysis of Buddhism takes us to the conclusion that Buddha taught the law of eternal return or recurrence in his doctrine of successive lives. Simplicius, cited by Ouspensky, wrote, "Pythagoreans stated that the same things are repeated over and over again." In connection with this theory, it is interesting to observe the words of Eudemus, disciple of Aristotle, in the third book of Psychics. He stated, "Some people accept and others reject that time is repeated. Repetition is understood in diverse ways. One type of repetition can occur in the natural order of things, for instance, the repetition of summers, winters, and other seasons, in the way that a new season comes after the disappearance of the other. The movement of heavenly bodies and the phenomena produced by them belong to this order of things, such as the solstices and equinoxes that are produced by the movement of the sun. Yet, if we are to believe that the Pythagoreans, another type of repetition exists. This means that I will talk to you and sit exactly like this while holding in my hand the same stick, and everything will be the same as now, and time, as you might expect, will be the same. Because if the movements of the heavenly bodies and many other things are the same, then what has already occurred in the past and what will occur afterwards are also the same. This also applies to repetition, which is also the same, or always the same. Everything is the same. To the law of reoccurrence, or recurrence, magnificently exposed by Eudemus in the former paragraphs, the only thing we have to add is the spiral that, according to Pythagoras, is the curve of life. Time is round and everything is repeated, at times in higher spirals, at times in lower spirals. The incessant repetition of the same dramas, the same scenes, the same events in each one of the 108 lives that the cosmic law always assigns to every human soul is interesting and yet simultaneously painful. Each life is a repetition of the previous life, plus its good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant karmic consequences. I want to add here that it's certainly not exactly the same, like sitting in the same chair and looking the same, having the same body and the same name. It's just the general karma and the circumstances are the same in a different body, in a possibly a different, maybe a different country or city. Usually karmic ties will keep you in the same place for a while, but there's always shifts for every lifetime. Nothing is really exactly the same. When a man dies, the anguishing moments of his agonizing death, his last moments and realizations, his last sensations, and his last fears are all found intimately related with the enjoyments of love, which originates his new birth. A new life starts exactly under the same conditions as that of the previous one. Clearly, it cannot start in any other way. According with the law of recurrence, when we are reborn again with this valley, within this valley of tears, the past is converted into the future. The intellectual animal, mistakenly called human, the human being, cannot change his or her circumstances. He is a victim of circumstance. Everything that happens to him is as mechanical as one season flowing into another. However, he has the illusion of doing things, yet in reality he does not have the power to do anything. Through him all things happen. Only the being is capable of doing. Only the being can originate new circumstances. Only the being can change the order of things. But alas, the intellectual animal has not incarnated the being. Within this valley of bitterness, there exist human machines with absolute repetition. They are 100% mechanical. Sometimes he explains that we are 97% or 98% mechanical, 98% ego, right? Just a few percentages of consciousness. Now he's saying 100%, but that's very close. These are people who repeat even the most insignificant details from their previous lives, constantly reincorporating themselves within this valley of Saint Josaphat. There are certain people whose repetition varies. At times they revive their previous lives in higher spirals and at times in lower spirals. On our very intriguing planet, there also exist certain types of people who had an increasing tendency towards degeneration. They resolutely march upon the descending spiral path. These are the drunkards, the suicidals, homosexuals. Unfortunately, sorry guys, it's just not really how nature works. Prostitutes, drug addicts, thieves, assassins, etc. In each life, these types of people repeat over and over again in a descending manner the same crimes. Thus, finally, they enter into the infernal worlds. On the other hand, in an apparently brilliant contrast to the previously mentioned descending life, yet in a positive, equally abominable, rather in a position equally abominable, we find upper-class people, such as the great celebrities, who worship the great harlot millionaires, the multimillionaires, and the perverse scientists who invent destructive weapons. Likewise, we find the tenebrous henchmen of the dialectic materialism who take from humanity their eternal values. So I guess what he's saying here is people who are becoming increasingly more powerful, but still degenerating their intellect and then their mind, feeding their defects. Sport fanatics and the great boxing contenders are there as well. Vain record breakers and comedians who love to play with their monster of 1,000 faces exist there too. Famous movie stars who justify all of their adulteries with innumerable matrimonies and divorces who abide there. Here too we can find the degenerated artists of this new age, painters, rock and roll bands, dancers and singers of rap and pop and Latin and so on. Likewise, we find the founders of harmful sects, the writers of pornographic literature, and so on. All types of skeptical people are found here as well, etc. All types of celebrities are hypnotized by triumph. This is precisely their great danger. They ignore that they are going down on a descending spiral. Thus, they enter into the infernal worlds inebriated by triumph. Triumphant types of people know exactly what they have to do each time they return to this worldly scenario. Thus, this is how they repeat their same adventures. They triumph, they feed their pride, they become famous and rich and fatter psychologically. So the law of recurrence is the cause for the devolution of all of these types of people in the infernal worlds. Within the abyss, they have to repeat in a devolving manner all of the animal, plant, and mineral processes, which in times of yore, they had already passed through, yet in an evolving manner. The final disintegration in the underworld is necessary and indispensable in order to liberate the lost souls. After having passed through their frightful millenarian journey within the underworld, these souls return to a new manifestation that has to begin on the lowest level, which is the mineral kingdom, the superior mineral kingdom after they are cleansed.